now spiraling out of control. It has been for a while. And in July, no surprise, we set new records for illegal border crossings. You ready for the numbers? Take a look at this. The Border Patrol announced it encountered more than 19,000 unaccompanied migrant children in July. That's migrant children. That's a record high, surpassing the record 18,877 in March. So far, there are more than 16,600 kids in federal custody. That's in custody. Don't forget, they've already released thousands back into America. Adding to the problems, border towns like McAllen, Texas, are overwhelmed with the huge flux of illegals crossing into America. The border busloads of these migrants are being dropped off across McAllen, Texas, and now the city's mayor, Javier Villalobos, is issuing a disaster declaration. It reads, quote, U.S. Customs and Border Protection is releasing an alarming substantial number of immigrants into the city of McAllen, Texas, including individuals that are positive for COVID-19. And to think they're having all of us mask up and get vaccinated and hunker down, but not the migrants, not the illegals. Well, Mayor Villalobos says the city is getting more than 1,500 migrants a day. But Team Biden is turning a blind eye to all of this, abandoning border towns and forcing them to fight the border crisis on their own, which is what Governor Abbott in Texas is trying to do himself as well. Well, joining me now is that mayor of McAllen, Texas, Javier Villalobos. Mayor, welcome to the program.
Hi, pleasure to be here.
So, Mayor, what is this like now for McAllen, Texas, and how does it differ from just a year or two ago?
Well, actually, it differs just from 2 weeks ago. Just 2 weeks ago, everything was still under control. We had, of course, we had a large amount of immigrants, but we were, let's say, 500, 600, 700. Just last week, we started reaching over 1,000. Last night, in excess of 1,800. And of course, we had help with Catholic Charities, and we were trying to do the best we can, and we were doing well. But once we hit over 1,800, Catholic Charities, Can Assist, the other NGOs, we're pretty much tapped out. Then coupled with the fact that there's been an increase in the COVID positivity, it's been a little more difficult because now they have to be quarantined and they stay, whereas before, within a day, we were able to move them out.
What does this mean for the people who live in McAllen? You know, I live in Texas. I've been through your little town there, maybe going down to the beach. It's always been a quiet town. I mean, a share of problems at times, but what's it been like for the people now here with this influx?
You know what? Fortunately, it's still pretty good. It had been pretty good. However, now we're starting to see the issues. It was especially last night when people started seeing in the downtown area that there was people walking around the respite center, whereas before we never had the issue. Well, of course, we had the immigrants coming through, but that was it. They'd come in and they'd leave. But it's been difficult now. We filed our declaration because at the very end now it's difficult. It's not our issue. It's a federal issue. It's not, even though Governor Abbott is trying to work something out, it's not a state issue or a county issue. It is a Washington issue. So we keep on imploring and telling them, look, do something. With a stroke of a pen, they can stop it.
They could, and I'd even pinpoint it even closer, not just a Washington issue, a White House issue. Let me play a soundbite from Secretary Mayorkas. Listen to who he blames for everything going on.
We are following an administration that frankly dismantled our capabilities to address it. And so we are building it from the ground up. Our safe and orderly systems were torn down. And so we're rebuilding them. And our plan is in place and we're executing it.
Mr. Mayor, there are two facilities near McAllen that had a total of 670 beds. They're now housing 5,000 people. Under President Trump, they'd get close to full, but never 5,000 people. What do you say to Secretary Mayorkas when he blames President Trump on this?
No, what I say is, look, I don't want to get into politics. However, I do know that 6, 7, 8 months ago, we didn't have this issue. So we need assistance. And of course, we can protect, we can defend, we can do whatever we can up to an extent. But when our hands are tied, when we can't even transport anymore, and when we're running out of money, it's a little difficult, and we need Washington to act.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask you this only because I know our viewers will want to know, and it doesn't matter to me either way. Are you Democrat or Republican? And the reason why I think it's important because I just want Joe Biden to get this message and who it's coming from.
You know what? I was elected by both. My position is nonpartisan, but of course I'm very conservative.
All right. Well, Mayor Villalobos, that's the best way to be, brother. And we appreciate you coming on the program. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. And good luck to your town as well. I know people who go in and out of that town. As I said, it is a great area of Texas that literally is being overwhelmed now because of Joe Biden and Joe Biden's alone policies and who's pulling his strings, right? Okay, shaming freedom-loving Americans, left-wing Marxists, condemning those. I need like a doorbell or a little bell to ring to signal ding-dong, okay? I don't know how else to explain him. You see, Ibram got it all wrong. It's Team Biden and his left that are enslaving all Americans to these outlandish China virus restrictions, the mandates, the lockdowns, more potentially economic crippling regulations. All of it is hurting this nation. He's got it backwards. I want to welcome in my panel. Ambassador for Turning Point USA and social media influencer, Isabella Riley. Also with us, contributor at Turning Point USA, Jordan Rachel is here. Isabella, Jordan, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. Rachel, let me ask you first, what do you make of that comment that all of us who just want to open up are slave owners?
So we are opposing lockdowns because this country cannot afford another lockdown. With a lockdown comes a country that is entirely economically depleted, and we don't want to plunge into socialism. The left has exploited and weaponized COVID for political power. They got their mail-in ballots, they got their president, they got rid of Donald Trump. We all know they were trying to get rid of him for the entirety of his presidency. And they had more Americans dependent on government than ever before in history, which is actually in direct alignment with what they desire for our country without COVID. I like to look at things logistically. So this arbitrary narrative that I resemble a slave owner or any other name that the left wants to call me, let's just add that to the list, has no effect on me. I am firmly opposing lockdowns.
Let me guess, Jordan. You never owned slaves, and you probably never were one. I'm sure Isabella never owned slaves either. In fact, I don't think there's anybody left in America who did. And I don't think there's anybody here that was one either. Yet this is the message they want to run through all of this. Isabella, why is it that they give guys like this a platform to spew this nonsense?
Well, if there's one thing that the left is good at is exploiting emotions, and that's what they're always doing. And I swear these radical leftists must have like a competition between each other on who can say the next crazy thing. But I mean, it is just ridiculous what they're saying, and they are fine with people having the freedom to steal each other's private property, but we won't listen to them, and I don't really care what they call me because I know what's true, and I don't want Americans being locked down. And under their logic, we should always be locked down because there's always something that we could be spreading, or, you know, we could always hurt each other in cars or something. So why not lock down every day of our lives under their logic?
And they know under those lockdowns it gives the government more power. So we also know that they push this woke mentality. It's also a way to control. And they're starting now at very young age. I'm going to play this clip from the Muppets, pushing now a cross-dressing lifestyle. Watch this. All right. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it with the three of us watching. I can't imagine if my kids were watching, Jordan.
This kind of ideology is detrimental to a nation. The left is infiltrating every entity, our institutions, our children's books, our children's TV shows with this warped perspective on biology and human nature. And the children are becoming increasingly confused. So this has to stop soon.
All right, it certainly does. They're confused about masks, too. I'm going to try to get this quick soundbite reel in quick. This is, do we have the National Institutes of Health? Yeah, NIH. Francis Collins, talk about kids at home. Isabella, and then I'll let you respond on the backside.
The recommendations are for kids under 12 that they avoid being in places where they might get infected, which means recommendations of mask wearing in schools, and that at home, parents of unvaccinated kids should be thoughtful about this. And the recommendation is to wear masks there as well.
Enough of that too. Isabella, all he had to say was have your kids wear their masks at home, and I'm done. Real quick. Isabella.
Yeah, I mean, they're just trying to give kids way too much responsibility, whether it's changing their genders. That's a life-altering decision that you cannot unring that bell, or wearing masks inside, which, let me tell you, it is hard for me to keep a mask on, let alone a child. So it's just ridiculous, and we should just reject everything that they're saying.
I agree 100%, as usual. Isabella Riley, Jordan Rachel, both of you, thank you for coming on tonight. It's been a pleasure having you both on. All right, folks. So first, it's lockdowns. Now they want to lock you out. New York City announcing a vaccine mandate to participate in society. Where does this all end?
It's time for people to see vaccination as literally necessary to living a good and full and healthy life.
Yeah, what he's saying is you will be punished. So you've been warned about this for weeks. I've been warning you. And now it's starting to become a reality, now in New York City. That's the tyrant mayor, Bill de Blasio, announcing today that the city will require proof of vaccination for anyone who wants to dine indoors, see a show, go to the gym. The gym, that's where the healthiest people are. So you see, this is now considered a privilege only, afforded to those who submit to the left's agenda. Personal choice in the modern-day Democrat Party is non-existent. It's been erased by the Marxist left, and it is bad news, okay? They are going to coerce you into compliance, and then if you don't comply, they will punish you. Well, I want to bring in now a pastor. His name is Brian Gibson. And one of the things that I'm so concerned about right now is the fact that they may take these mandates and push them into churches. Pastor Gibson, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I do believe they will come after churches. I believe you're right.
Well, look, Pastor, we know they already did. You know, during the height of COVID, I remember pastors in California were just trying to preach the word outside, being arrested when you had Antifa goons and BLM thugs burning down places. They left them untouched, but they went and arrested the pastor, so it wouldn't surprise me. How concerned are you about the direction we're headed, and really concerned for your congregation or anyone else who loves God?
Well, we're extremely concerned. During the last lockdowns, I have congregations both in Texas and Kentucky, and Governor Beshear of Kentucky came after the church again and again and again. Everybody else got to open up, but the church was the super spreader. Now, I'll tell you, we better learn something from the last go-round. This time, every pastor in America, you ought to stand up. You should not comply. Don't comply to the mask mandates. Don't comply to this vaccine madness. Don't comply to any of the lockdowns. Keep the church open. See, America was founded because there were some wild, non-compliant pastors who spoke out against King George, spoke out against British tyranny. As a matter of fact, they preached the concepts that are now in the Constitution. Their name was the Black Robe Regiment. They even led the militiamen into war. Like, what we need right now is we need a group of black robe preachers that'll stand up for the word of God. So we believe the Bible teaches us that it's better to obey God than man. So I'm calling every pastor, be a black robe pastor. Don't be a yellow robe pastor. Don't play the coward.
Well, and it's great advice, because so many pastors don't want to get involved in these kind of fights. But this really is a fight for religion as well. We know the left is waging war on those who want to believe in God, who believe in religion. Let me play a soundbite from you from Joe Biden, just to show you how far this goes.
I want to be crystal clear about what's happening in the country today. We have a pandemic of the unvaccinated. That means if you're unvaccinated, you are much more likely to, 1, get COVID-19, 2, get hospitalized, and 3, die if you get it.
Think of that, Pastor.
Yeah, they're playing. This comes straight out of the Marxist handbook, right? You try to set as many different groups against each other as you can in a nation to weaken it, tear it apart, and rebuild it in the image you want. At first in America, it was racial tension, black versus white. Now we're moving from vaccinated to the unvaccinated. And I'll tell you, it's scary Because whenever you see guys saying, you see leaders saying, you can go to the gym if you have the vaccination, you see the president talking about the problem that is the unvaccinated. These things have played out before in history, where you take a certain group of people and demonize them. And I'll tell you what it is. It's a framework for animosity between two groups at best. At worst, it's a framework for a future genocide. We need to stand up and speak out against this kind of stuff. This isn't even FDA approved. It is insanity.
Well, look, Pastor, I appreciate you coming on the program with this strong voice because I think others will learn from you. And I think others who are pastors as well will learn from this, and there's strength in numbers. And so I appreciate you laying it on the line for us. God bless you, sir. We'll talk again soon.
Hey, thank you, sir.
Absolutely. All right, folks, karma on very obvious display at the Tokyo Olympics. The common theme that's differentiating the winners and the losers. That's next. Back, everyone, as the old saying goes, karma is a witch. If you're watching the Olympics unfold, there's a repetitive theme. Go woke and lose. A bunch of bad apples have ruined it for the bunch of prime examples, okay? The U.S. women's soccer team. The main social justice warriors there kneeling. Their so-called activism. Well, they just lost to Canada for the first time in 20 years, killing their gold medal chance. It's the second time in a row they've been knocked off a chance for a medal, and I have to say, divider-in-chief Megan Rapinoe is at fault for leading her team into politics and not practice. Karma, right? How about Gwen Berry, the arrogant hammer thrower who turned away from the American flag? Guess what happened to her? She failed to medal. And then there's Laurel Hubbard of New Zealand, the biological male who started trying to weightlift at a women's competition. She started a big stink about wanting to compete in women's weightlifting. Well, they let him, and lo and behold, Hubbard has already exited from the Olympics, failing all 3 lifts yesterday, not even finishing. Hubbard was not only one not to compete even one lift. Again, karma here. And then there's good karma. This woman, her name is Tamira Mensah-Stock, and she just became the second American to win a wrestling gold medal today. No drama, no activism, just hard work. Watch this. USA. Way to go, Mensah-Stock. That's how all of our athletes should be acting. Patriotic, proud of our country, humble, happy. So kudos to Tamira for setting an example the other athletes should learn from. This is what the American dream is all about. Well, that's going to do it for us. You know what, though? I'm living the American dream. I get to do this every night, and I am blessed for it. I got a great crew back in the control room as well, thanks to them. But most of all, thanks to all of you, Stinchfield's Army, for making this a very fast-growing program on cable news. We are so humbled by that. We'll see you back here tomorrow, 8 Eastern time. Cortez and Pellegrino up next. Joe Manchin's wife. That alone amounts to a payoff, and yes, for a yes vote, clearly. $16.3 billion will go to the Department of Energy's renewable energy program. Climate change garbage. $250 million for an invasive plant elimination program. That's infrastructure? No. Apparently, we know it's not. $10 million every year between 2022 and 2026 for a national motor vehicle per mile user fee. It's a pilot program, they say, but these pilot programs always get enacted into law. It amounts to a per mile tax on how much you drive. It will make it more expensive for you to travel in your car, as if skyrocketing gas prices, thanks to Joe Biden, wasn't good enough. It also goes against Biden's promise to not raise taxes for those who make less than $400,000 a year. If you're paying a per mile fee, I promise you, even poor people will be paying that. On top of all that, you will hear senators talk a lot about the expansion of broadband. They speak of this proudly. But in order to get a federal grant to do just that in your community, cities and states will need to meet minority quota levels. Now, we're all Americans, aren't we? Shouldn't the money be based off of need, not race? But no one talks about that.
Neither side got everything we wanted. There are a bunch of things in this bill I don't like, I'd take out. There are things in this bill I know my Democrat friends don't like and would take out. But the nature of getting work done in Washington is to be able to come up with something that has enough good for both that we actually get it done.
That man represents more Democrats than he does Republicans. That's Mitt Romney of Utah. He's a rhino, a Republican in name only. What did Republicans get out of this bill? The answer is absolutely nothing. This is exactly why you need to be outraged. 9 Republicans helped write this bill. 9 more joined them and signed on to it. 18 Republicans in total willing to sell out America for what? This is in the United States Senate. To give Biden the upper hand. This bill is a power grab. It's a money grab, and it most certainly is a freedom grab. Every Republican should denounce it. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's shame the 18 spineless Republican senators that need to be denounced themselves. Here's a list of them. Write them down if you want. Roy Blunt of Missouri, Richard Burr of North Carolina, Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia. This bill wages war on coal, by the way. It imposes strict carbon reductions. Why would anyone from West Virginia sign on to this bill that will destroy an already battered coal industry? But both senators from West Virginia will. Bill Cassidy of Louisiana is on the list. Mike Crapo of Idaho, James Risch of Idaho, Tom Tillis of North Carolina. This list goes on, folks, and I'll read it all. Indiana's Todd Young, Mike Rounds of South Dakota, John Hoeven, and Kevin Kramer of North Dakota. Now, I expected people like this to sign on to it. Alaska's Lisa Murkowski, Ohio's Rob Portman, and of course, Mitt Romney from Utah and Susan Collins of Maine. What do we dub them? The usual suspects, right? But Chuck Grassley of Iowa? Come on, Senator. And maybe the 2 most important senators to show their true colors as Senate amoebas, meaning they don't have spines. Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator Mitch McConnell. Those 2, all of these I read, really, need to stand up against this massive expansion of government. 18 Republicans helping foster a communist agenda. What has happened to their will to fight for us? Don't forget, we put them in office. They don't respect that. How can they be behind? How can they be behind such a bill? It is mystifying, folks.
But I believe our colleagues' draft text provides a good and important jumping-off point for what needs to be a robust and bipartisan process.
What an absolute disappointment. President Trump says it best. He don't like Mitch McConnell anymore. I never really liked the guy, ever, because I get this from Mitch McConnell. Bipartisan, he says, that's a hoax, folks. There's a $30 billion tax on cryptocurrencies. Why is the government getting involved in this? These big government ruling class of career politicians from both parties just cannot keep their grubby mitts off anything. And yet, the media will tell you, like McConnell, that it's bipartisan. The reality is there's nothing bipartisan about this. It's a Democrat wish list. The Republicans on board are acting like Democrats.
In hard infrastructure with input from a bipartisan group of senators.
This hard infrastructure bipartisan bill will get done.
Bipartisan infrastructure package.
For the bipartisan infrastructure bill.
Okay.
What I mentioned here, gender identity. It's not hard infrastructure. Doesn't even play hardly a role, hard infrastructure. And it certainly isn't bipartisan. What you just heard there is fake news pushed by the mainstream media and those devious senators and congressmen and women. A play on words, bipartisan. That's what it is. A play on words to make you think this radical bill is moderate. It is not. It is dangerous, and it must be stopped. Well, joining me now is Republican Congressman of Texas. Pat Fallon is here, who I know is doing all he can to stop it. Congressman, welcome to the program.
Grant, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Great monologue.
All right, so I'm just going to lay it out there. Can this bill be stopped?
It's an uphill battle for sure. I'm shocked that they got 18 Republican senators to vote for this. This is a massive redistribution of wealth. As you mentioned, who the heck has already read 2,701 pages? I think I read about 55 pages a minute, or rather an hour. It'd take me 49 hours. You're a quicker reader than I am. Only 10% of this goes to real infrastructure. It's frightening. If they got it through Well, you get it through the Senate, it's going to get through the House because Nancy Pelosi has 222 votes to our 213. So even if every Republican votes against it, it'll get out of the House.
So you got 18 senators on board with this thing. You've always been an outspoken guy. I'm sure you pass these guys in the hall. You say anything to them when they're walking by?
This one, well, senators, they speak with a British accent. I don't even know if they know where the House is, quite frankly. You go over there, they ask the sergeant at arms to check us for lice. So I think they've just lost. Some of these folks have lost touch. That's why I love being in the House in so much as we're the closest federal office to the people. The people don't want this, and I love what you mentioned about broadband, Grant, because that's very important. I represent a largely rural district, and we need broadband internet, and we need that access. And I really do believe that in the 21st century, that is infrastructure. But to have them throw in this clause about having it, with it has to be protected class or equity. Equity, by the way, is mentioned in this bill 64 times, which to me is 64 red flags for this not being a true bipartisan infrastructure bill.
Why are they mentioning equity, social equity, in an infrastructure bill? It's beyond me. I want to play this soundbite from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This is what she says about the bill, and she wants to hijack the United States Congress. Listen.
If there is not a reconciliation bill in the House, and if the Senate does not pass the reconciliation bill, we will uphold our end of the bargain and not pass the bipartisan bill until we get all of these investments in.
How many House progressives do you think are with you on this?
I believe a very large amount of the Progressive Caucus.
Pat Fallon, this is what I've been saying. They pass this infrastructure bill. They tee it up to move reconciliation, which is going to be even worse than this one, straight on through to make it law.
Yeah, no, that's it's funny about this particular bill. If her Progressive Caucus votes against it and joins all the Republicans, there's actually a chance that we could kill it. But they're banking on, they're betting on the come, being that they can get even more money spent. I mean, Grant, our national debt is exploded. That $550 billion, there's not even offsets in it that could offset it for 10 years. So this is going to add more. We're just mortgaging more of our future. I have sons that are 15 and 12, and I shudder to think about what their lives are going to be like in a few decades.
Yeah. Well, listen, keep fighting up there. And if you do happen to see them in the hallways, you give them a message from all of Stinchfield's army that we think they're all spineless. All right,
well,
Congressman?
Grant, I'm going to look at him and go, what do you know what? Come on. Represent the people and the country in our best interests. Unbelievable.
Well, wouldn't that be nice? Congressman Pat Fallon, as always, thank you, buddy.
Grant, take care.
Absolutely, my man. Thank you. All right, folks, listen, we got to put the pressure on, call your lawmakers, do whatever you can to make sure this thing stops. But really, it's in their hands right now. But we can be vocal about it, and that often does put pressure on them. All right, so we move to New York now. Handsy Andrew Cuomo, the governor there, in deep trouble.